You are not here by accident. We are standing at the edge of possibilities between what is, what could, and what will be. Where time, space, and humanity cross paths. Where the future has stopped being theory as old assumptions fade away and new realities are becoming real. Are you ready to step beyond the familiar? Look no further and enter the third horizon.
Before we begin, let us step back. In the last several episodes, we have been building a pattern. We explored how systems remember and what happens when they forget. We explored how they hold together through cohesion, through trust, not as a feeling, but as a structure. And we explored something deeper still, that even strong systems, even trusted systems, must operate in a world that does not stand still. So the question begins to evolve. Not just what holds a system together, but what happens when that system moves beyond itself. In our last episode, we explored what holds systems together. Trust. And in that trust, you have cohesion, which allows them to operate. But trust and cohesion alone do not determine how systems are recognized. There is a pattern that runs quietly through human history. New ideals, new systems, new actors. They do not arrive coming into an empty space. They arrive coming into structures that have been built over time. Structures shaped by history, by institutions, by systems designed for stability, not rapid change. Systems that began long before them and evolved through generations, refined through success and failures. And if you step back and look at it, you begin to see something else. A pattern, a progression. What the third horizon calls the evolution of legitimacy. Every system that is eventually recognized moves through stages. Foundation, where identity, purpose, and cohesion are formed. Institutions, where structure begins to take shape. Participation, where the system engages with others. Legitimacy, where it demonstrates the ability to function. And finally, recognition, not claimed, but accepted. Because these systems, whether political, scientific, or social, do not accept newcomers easily. They do not respond to declaration alone. They respond to demonstrated function, to consistency, to time. And that leads us to a simpler truth. Declaration is a moment. Recognition is a journey. These systems of old do not do what they do because they are hostile, but because they are responsible for continuity. So the question is not simply, can something emerge? The question is, how does something new become legitimate in a system that was not built for it? So let us break this down. Because recognition does not happen all at once. It follows a path. No system becomes recognized overnight. There is a progression. First, foundation, a shared identity, a purpose, a collective will. Then, participation, engagement with other systems through trade, through diplomacy, through interaction. Then comes function. Institutions must work. Systems must operate. Capabilities must be demonstrated. Then legitimacy. Not just internal belief, but external production and acceptance. And only then does recognition emerge. Declaration is not enough. Recognition follows demonstrated legitimacy. History gives us clear examples. Israel began as a movement, but it built governance, developed an economy, established international ties, and demonstrated the ability to function. It declared independence in 1948 and was admitted to the United Nations in 1949. South Sudan spent decades building toward recognition through agreements, through participation, through institutional development. It gained independence in 2011 and was admitted to the UN within days. Timor-Leste built legitimacy through international support, through administration, through preparation for self-governance. It gained independence in 2002 and was admitted shortly after by the United Nations. In each case, recognition followed function, not declaration. Not every declaration leads to recognition. Kosovo declared independence in 2008. It has institutions. It is recognized by many, but not all. It is not a UN member. Taiwan has strong institutions, a powerful economy, global influence, but limited diplomatic recognition. It is not a UN member. Palestine has partial recognition, limited sovereignty, and ongoing political barriers. It is not a UN member. These examples show us something important. Recognition requires consensus. Without it, statehood remains incomplete. This is the balance every system must navigate. Here on the third horizon, We call this the balanced scale of recognition. On one side, systems built over time, participation, function, legitimacy, recognition. This leads to stability, and stability leads to long-lasting statehood. On the other side, systems that declare too soon, without function, without legitimacy, without consensus. This leads to fragility, isolation, and instability. A state is not made by declaration alone. A state is made by demonstrated ability, earned trust, and gradual recognition. There is a moment in nearly every emerging system that feels decisive. A declaration, a document, a flag is raised. And in that moment, it can feel complete, as if something has been created, as if statehood has been achieved. But what you are seeing is only the beginning, because a declaration does not create legitimacy. It symbolizes intent. It marks a moment of claim, but it does not compel recognition. Time is required. Function must be demonstrated. Participation must be established. Legitimacy must be built. And only then can recognition be earned. Because the system does not respond to words alone. It responds to what works, to what endures, and to what proves itself over time. Declaration is a moment. Recognition is a journey. Recognition is not self-assigned. It is granted through interaction, through acceptance, through alignment, with shared meaning. Because systems do not recognize themselves. They are recognized by others. And this is where many misunderstand the process. For instance, consider the Montevideo Convention, often cited as the foundation of statehood. It outlines characteristics which are a permanent population, a defined territory, government, and the capacity to enter into relations with other states. These are important. They define structure. They define capability. But they do not compel acceptance. They do not guarantee recognition. They provide a starting point, not a final outcome. Because recognition does not come from meeting criteria alone. It comes from participation, from interaction with other systems, from being accepted within an existing structure, from aligning with shared norms, shared expectations, and shared meaning. That is how recognition forms. Recognition is not a condition you declare. It is a condition others accept. And over time, that recognition becomes legitimacy. There are emerging actors today, digital, organizational, even space-based, who face this exact challenge. And it is not a question of vision, but a question of pathway. One path creates stability, while the other instability. Philosopher David Hume once suggested that authority does not exist in isolation. It exists in the perception of others, not just in what is claimed, but in what is accepted. And if you step back, you begin to see something else, a pattern, a cycle, what the Third Horizon calls the cycle of legitimacy. It begins with a claim. Authority is asserted. Then observation. Others watch. They assess behavior. They evaluate outcomes. Then perception. Judgment forms. Not from words, but from actions. Then acceptance. Trust is built. Consistency is demonstrated. Then recognition. Granted by others. Within the system. And over time, that recognition becomes legitimacy. Because power without recognition is unstable. And recognition is never self-declared. It is reflected back through the system around it. Authority may be claimed, but legitimacy is observed. Power can be declared, but legitimacy must be recognized and over time observed. Because in practice, a state is not just what it claims to be. It is what others are willing to treat it as. There are environments within the global system where this reality becomes even more clear. Places where the rules are not just understood, but enforced. Antarctica is one of them, a vast isolated continent, covered in ice, with no permanent population, and no traditional system of governance. And yet, it is not unclaimed. It is regulated. Under the Antarctic Treaty System, territorial claims are effectively frozen. No new claims are recognized. No expansions are validated. Not because systems have not tried, but because the structure itself does not allow it. And this is where something important begins to emerge. Because Antarctica is not just a place, it is a system. And to understand why that system resists new claims, we have to look closer at, at, at how it actually works. This is not an oversight. It is a deliberate design, a system created to prevent conflict, not by force, but by removing the incentive for unilateral control. Because when territorial expansion is no longer possible, competition shifts from claiming land to participating within the system, from control to cooperation. And that changes everything. Under the Antarctic Treaty System, existing claims are set aside, not resolved, not expanded, frozen. New claims are not even recognized at all. Expansions are not validated. And because of that, the system remains stable. But this stability comes with a cost. It creates a boundary, a limit on how new actors can enter. So when a new actor approaches a system like this with the intent to declare sovereignty outright, the system does not negotiate. It does not adapt. It responds with something much simpler: rejection. Not subject to debate, not open to interpretation, not recognized. Not out of hostility, not out of resistance, and not out of fear, but out of structure. Because systems like this are not designed to expand rapidly. They are designed to preserve stability, to protect what already exists, to maintain balance within a defined framework. And when something approaches from the outside, without alignment, without participation, without legitimacy, the system does not open that door. It closes that door. Not because it rejects the ideal, but because the ideal has not yet met the structure required to enter. This is how systems defend themselves, not with force, but with structure. But constraints do not eliminate possibility. They define the path. Because in systems that resist declaration, there is still movement, still activity, still participation. And if you look closely, this is where the real process begins. Not at the point of claim, but at the point of function. Because there is another way actors enter complex systems, not through declaration, but through function. Before an actor is recognized for what it claims, it is recognized for what it does. Because systems do not respond to intention, they respond to contribution. Contribution creates presence. Presence builds relevance. Relevance establishes legitimacy, and legitimacy becomes the foundation for recognition. This is not theory. It is how systems work. And when this process begins, it does not remain abstract. It takes shape in real environments, in real systems, through what the third horizon defines as functional domains, spaces where participation is possible, where contribution can be demonstrated, and where recognition begins to form. These take many forms. Participation zones, where actors engage directly with existing systems. Research domains, where knowledge is created, shared, and advanced together. Economic cooperation frameworks, where value is exchanged and interdependence develops. This is where the system becomes accessible. These are not symbolic spaces. They are functional ones, where interaction is real, where contribution is measurable, and where trust begins to form. Thomas Hobbes approached this problem differently. He argued that order itself depends on shared recognition. On the willingness of individuals to accept a common structure. Because without that shared recognition, structure exists, but it does not hold. Rules may be written, institutions may be built, authority may be claimed, but if it is not recognized, it is not accepted. And when it is not accepted, systems begin to fragment. Not because they lack structure, because that structure is not acknowledged. And the same principle applies at scale between systems, between nations, between emerging actors and established ones. Because recognition is not an outcome of structure. It is what allows structure to function at all. And this brings us back to the pathway we just defined. A functional domain is not created by proclamation. It is created when others recognize the role that is played within the system. In network science, a node has no influence simply by existing. Its importance is determined by its connections. A node that does not connect does not participate. And a node that does not participate is not recognized by the system. Because systems do not measure presence. They measure interaction. They measure contribution. They measure connection. But once connections form, once interaction begins, the node gains position, relevance, and eventually influence. And over time, That influence becomes recognition. The network does not reward existence. It rewards engagement. None of this is achieved by proclamation. It is achieved through interaction in ways the system recognizes. And now a word for our sponsors.
This episode of The Third Horizon is brought to you by CoinToss Coffee, a brand built on passion, family, and the bold leap into possibility. Every blend is handcrafted from Kevin's own recipes, including their best-selling Cowboy Roast, bold, smooth, and unforgettable. And right now, listeners of The Third Horizon can enjoy 10% off their order at cointosscoffee.com using promo code Horizon10. That is cointosscoffee.com. CoinToss Coffee. Take a chance on a better cup.
When we study systems that successfully integrate complexity, a pattern emerges. They do not accept ideals based on assertion. They accept them based on performance. The Apollo program did not exceed because it declared success. It succeeded because hundreds of thousands of components across thousands of organizations functioned together. And over time, that performance did something more. It created reliability. Reliability built trust, and that trust became recognition. Not as a claim, but as a demonstrated capability. Because Apollo was not just a mission, it was a functional domain. The Dutch Delta Works, which you've heard often on this podcast, did not earn trust through vision alone. It earned it through decades of engineering performance, proving over time that the system could hold. This pattern is not limited to nations. We see it everywhere in how global standards emerge. Internet protocols, measurement systems, technical frameworks. They are not adopted because they are declared superior. They are adopted because they work, because they are used, because others begin to rely on them. And over time, usage becomes acceptance. Acceptance becomes standard, and standard becomes authority. And science itself operates on the same principle. Not belief, not declaration, but repeatable, verifiable function. Because in science, nothing is accepted simply because it is claimed. It must be tested, observed, repeated, verified by others across environments, across time, and only then does it become trusted. Systems trust what is proven, not what is proclaimed. And when something is proven consistently over time, that is when legitimacy forms. Imagine the international system. Think of it as a room. And inside that room are, imagine tables. A large table on one side where established powers sit. The world's most influential nations. And on the other side, a smaller table where developing nations engage, participating, building position within the system. But there is another space, less visible, but just as important, off in the middle, in the corner, a space for those who are not fully recognized, but are actively participating, working, contributing, engaging within the system, often referred to as non-state actors. Because no one begins with a seat at the table. They begin by being allowed in to the room. And entry into that room is not forced. It is earned through participation. In space, we see this pattern clearly. The International Space Station is not owned by a single nation. It is sustained through cooperation, through contribution, through shared function. Nations did not gain influence there by claiming it. They gained it by building it, maintaining it, and participating in it. And through that participation, they earned position within the system itself. And now, another word for our sponsors.
This episode of The Third Horizon is also brought to you by FCA, Fine Consulting Agency. If you need high-level policy analysis, structured research, or strategic writing tailored for government, space governance, or nonprofit sectors, FCA delivers clarity, organization, and deep insight. Learn more at fcaonline.info, that is fcaonline.info.
The path from emergence to recognition has never been immediate. It has never been simple. And it has never been achieved through declaration alone. It moves through participation, through alignment, through contribution within the system that already exists. It is not a limitation. It is a process. One that has shaped every recognized actor in the modern world. So, the question is not whether something new can become part of the international system. It can. The question is how it chooses to enter. Civilizations do not fail because they are denied recognition. They fail because they never build the legitimacy required to earn it. But recognition is not the end of the process. It is only the beginning. Because once a system is recognized, once it becomes part of a larger environment, it faces a new reality. Pressure, change, continuous interaction with forces beyond its control. And history shows us something important. Recognition does not guarantee survival. History makes that clear. Systems that enter must also endure. They must balance stability with the ability to adapt as conditions change around them. So the question evolves once again. Not just how did a system become recognized, but what allows it to survive once it has gained that recognition. In our next episode, we explore that balance between stability and adaptation, and why survival is never a fixed condition. This podcast is not about blame. This podcast is not about taking sides. This podcast is about discovering and exploring the deeper meaning behind the human experience and the systems that shape it. And if you sense the world is shifting, if you feel the tension between what is and what could be, if you believe humanity is meant for something more, then welcome. This is the Third Horizon. Thank you for joining me today. More conversations are coming, deeper, wider, and firmly focused on the future. If you enjoyed today's episode, hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our Spotify, YouTube, or Facebook channels, or whatever platform you are listening from. And don't forget to share this podcast with your friends and family. Until next time, keep your eyes on the horizon and beyond.